Christianity is about more than just sitting in church on a Sunday, and that's what we're going to talk about in today's conversation. Hey there, welcome to another episode of Monday Moments, a show in which we take a deeper dive into Sunday sermon. My name is Travis. I'm your host today. With me today is Pastor James. And welcome to our first conversation of 2025. If you're watching this as it's being released, broadcast to the masses of Freedom Fellowship Church.
World Wide Web.
We're a global phenomenon. Not yet. Kicking off 2025 strong, really diving into discipleship.
Yeah.
And beginning with discipleship, I loved how you dove into what I'm going to call active Christianity, not passive. It's not Christianity is more about more than just learning. How many facts, how many scriptures can I memorize? I know a lot about stuff, and more about an active role in the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
There's that classic kind of Christianese framing. You were saved on, what was it? You're saved on purpose for a purpose.
Yeah.
And whether we think that's cliche or not, it's true.
Yeah.
And so I love that we're starting here with 2025, just kind of hitting the ground running, so to speak. And so wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that and really take some time to dig into some of the truths that are in God's word and how that applies today, why we're seeing some of the things that we're seeing. And so first of all, as was throughout all 2024, I'm not going to change, by the way. I'm going to start off with why, because I just love asking why. And a little bit of an interesting question is why did God put his work in our hands? Being that we are imperfect.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You even mentioned, Peter, kind of just saying things and not really thinking. Well, I want to be respectful to the Apostle Peter here. Let me just say that.
No, say more, Travis.
Yeah, keep going.
Tell me.
Dig that hole a little bit deeper.
Down for when you get to the gate.
It would seem like he spoke before he thought. It would seem like. But all of us being imperfect as we are, the Lord still chose us to be that royal priesthood.
Yeah.
It chose us to be his representatives, to carry on the work that he began. And even in Acts, those opening lines, Luke is, if I remember right, writing to Theophilus, everything that he saw and heard and witnessed. And he said, this is based off of my first letter of the work that Jesus began, and hinting at there's still a continuing work that Jesus is doing, but now he's doing it through the Holy Spirit in the apostles and through us, the church today. So I'm sorry, I'm gonna loop back to my original question. Why did God put his work in our hands instead of just doing it himself?
Yeah. So as we often do, I always say we got to go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
And so we go all the way back to the beginning of Genesis. We go back to creation, and the Lord does all of these. He creates all of these things over, over these first couple of days of creation, and then he creates man, and he does something very interesting. He says he creates him in his own image, but there's an even greater distinction between these things, because the earth, the earth was created to give God glory. Mankind was given. He was the only part of creation that was given a free will, and so God constructs and informs and frames man in such a way that man has the freedom to choose whether or not he will serve God. And so it sets us apart. And so it's why, all of the other arguments about creation and things like that, they really come down to this one thing, is that man was given a free will about who he was going to serve. Everything else is created for the pleasure of God, to serve the Lord, all of these different things, and yet man has this independent will that it gets to choose who it's going to serve. And so it would only in that regard make sense that the Lord would give us this great task of taking forth this gospel. At the same time, as a lot of things are, it feels almost foolish. Because we're so fallible. We're so
Excuse me.
we're so inconsistent oftentimes with these things that from a base standpoint, I think that's why you read passages in the Bible that say things like God will use the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. I mean, it's like this is a prime example for me. I'm like, it seems if this is so important, it would seem foolish to put it in fallible men's hands, but yet. It denotes how much God loves us. It conveys such a beautiful picture of the plan that He has for us, and so it really should be. It should never be this source of pride that we've been given these things. It should be this place of humility that's like, Lord, I can't believe that you would entrust me. It's like going to your toddler. And giving them the most valuable thing that your family has and saying, now take care of this. It's like, it would feel foolish from a parenting standpoint, but it conveys such a tremendous worth from the Father that He places on us, that He would give us this gift of salvation and then tell us to take that same gift and to give it everywhere that we could.
It's very much encapsulated in the Scripture. We have been given this treasure in jars of clay. It's fragile, and I think it echoes one of the themes in all of Scripture is that God chooses the weak things of the world. And it's that kind of strength and vulnerability that we see in the choosing of Mary. The fact that Jesus came as a baby. The King of the world. We just at the time we're recording this, we're just on the other side of Christmas, right? So Jesus came into the world as a vulnerable baby, helpless, needy. And it's that same way. And I think you're absolutely right. Number one, we were given a task to do in the garden, right? God told Adam to tend to the garden. And almost obviously not in the same way and capacity and power, but it's similarly like God brought order out of chaos in creation. God gives us that same task to bring order, His kingdom order into chaos of the systems of this world, the bringing the light to the darkness, and yet. Just like you said, God came to Paul. Paul said, I have this thorn in my flesh. And I prayed earnestly that God would remove this thorn from my flesh. And God said, my power is made perfect in weakness. And wow, what a humbling and challenging place to be, is to be so at times painfully aware of our weakness and our imperfection. And yet so joyfully aware that the Lord still wants to use us.
And it creates a dependence. I mean, it's like when we become the more aware that we are of who we are, the more clarity we gain around just how much we need the Lord. And so that's one of the things that I always try to be aware of, intimately aware, with not just with the weaknesses that are obvious, but David had that famous prayer. Search my heart and see if there be any wicked. In other words, he was telling the Lord, look, there may be things in my life that even I am unaware of. Would you, Father of all things, come and search my heart and see if there's anything that resides within me? I think it's a great posture to have, especially as we are being given this great responsibility for sharing the gospel with the world around us.
And it's really, I keep saying encouraging. I don't think encouraging quite encapsulates what I'm trying to communicate, but it's encouraging that the Lord looks at us and says, I still have a plan and I still have a purpose for you, Your past, doesn't disqualify you from the plans that I have.
Yeah.
And just like he was faithful to Israel, even though Israel was historically just unfaithful to him, like God's promises to that nation, he still kept those. And it really does go back to saying, like, God is the hero of the story. Like, we aren't. God is faithful. God is perfect. We aren't. And it's him working in us and through us, but at the same time, he's inviting us to be part of the work. Elsewhere in the New Testament, it says we are co-laborers with Christ. And what an amazing privilege that is, that we're not just saved to take up space, to just kind of drift through life meaninglessly. And it's really encouraging. And so kind of a follow-up question that I had as I was listening to your message, you had this great line towards the end of your message. You talked about mistaking your presence for your purpose.
Yeah.
And if you had to give an answer, why do we often mistake our presence as purpose? What would your answer to that be? Like, why do we often kind of mistake that?
Yeah, I think that we. I think that we overemphasize our presence,
okay.
and I think that a lot of times we think, well, I'm here, I showed up. I know, like with my kids, when the family is asked to do something, if we're picking up the house, I don't want you to just show up and stand there. Like, I want you to be a part. I want you to do something, and I think that we kind of overvalue. It's like, well, the best gift I could give to you is my presence. And it's like, well, it's not the best gift you could give to me. It requires you to be here in order for me to benefit from what you have to offer. And so your presence is required, yes. But your presence is not your purpose in being here. And I think that sometimes we get to these places and we feel like, okay, I made it.
Right.
And then we stop looking for, what am I supposed to do here? And I know growing up, my mom and my dad, anytime we would go somewhere, my dad would or my mom would be like, hey, be helpful. Do something. Pick up something, put something away, like help out with whatever you see is going on. And so they never wanted me to be the person that was just standing there while everybody else was doing something. And they're like, just find something to do. And I think that there's a part in that. I think it's important in what we do. I think that Jesus gives us very specific instruction. We looked at Acts 1:8. He says, be my witnesses. We looked at Matthew 28, 18 through 20. He says, make disciples, teach, baptize, all of these different things. I think that he has some very specific things that he wants us to do in doing those things. But it all involves more than just showing up, but you still have to show up.
Yeah,
so it's like, it's the first thing. But I think too often people get to this place that they're like, well, I was there. Like I was at it. I'm like, yeah, but were you a part?
Right.
You can be present and not be a part. Yeah. And Jesus invites us to be a part of the work that he's doing, not just to be an observer. There was a lot of people throughout Jesus' ministry that could claim that they were there.
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot of people that could say that they were a part.
Right.
The disciples were a part. Like, they were followers of Jesus. They were not just present when he was doing the miracles. They were asking questions. They were getting engaged. They were being a part of what it was that Jesus was doing. And so there's a significant difference between just being present. And that's why, even on Sunday mornings, like Sunday mornings is such a valuable time for the family of God to be able to come together and to be encouraged and to be built up and to be challenged. And so we should be on Sunday mornings both inspirational and confrontational.
Sure.
Like there should be a part of it that, like, we're getting encouraged and we're getting built up, but there should always be a time when we encounter the Word that it's confronting something in us.
Yeah.
And that confronting and that inspiration should lead to more than just my presence being there. It should lead to something needs to change in me so that I can become more like him.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen without action.
It's true. And I remember especially as a kid, especially as a teenager, but and even sometimes now, I find that I have a tendency to avoid starting something, a task, a project, or whatever. But once I'm in it, I'm in it, right?
Yeah.
I can put my head down, I can get in the zone, and I can focus. You know, I remember as a kid being asked to wash the dishes, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do this, and I would avoid it. But then once I did it, I was like, oh, okay, I can do this, and it felt good about completing something, like doing that task.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Good
you.
for you.
I appreciate that affirmation. And I think too, like, I don't know if it's a fear that people have. I don't know if it's just I don't know where to start, and therefore I won't start, or you know I feel disqualified. I don't know what the reason is, but I think if people would just start, and realize that Christianity isn't just about coming up to church on a Sunday. I think that's important, like you said, and I love that you said the line. Pastors are and correct me if I get it wrong, but pastors are the support line. The church is the front line.
Yes,
you know, and the church is really that time to come together, to support, encourage, refine, refuel. You know, and then to get back out there, and to be an active part. You know, and I think I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too. There's a I think something to be said where we can be busy, and we can get caught up in the busyness, but not the business, of the kingdom, right? And there's a verse that says, they had a form of godliness, but they denied its power. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know, there was years ago. I don't see it as much anymore. I used to see a bumper sticker all the time that says "Jesus is coming, look busy," and I always was like, man, like, can you imagine if that was like? Now I realize they were being. It was kind of this slight at Christianity, I would assume. I don't know who developed it, but it was like it's this idea that's like the only thing that Jesus cares about is if we're, you know, hey, look busy so that you don't get in trouble when he gets here. And I think that a big part of that reason why we can be busy but not really be about the business of the kingdom is that we just don't know what the kingdom is really all about. And I think it's I think it's an ignorance. I don't think it's a disobedience.
Sure.
And I always want to be. We tend to use that word ignorant in really harsh terms. I actually think that ignorant is better applied to kind of like a childlike. It's not someone being obstinate or hard. It's someone doing something without really knowing what it is that they're doing. And I have a tremendous amount of compassion for that. Like when I see people that are just kind of living in ignorance, I'm like, oh, they just need help understanding. And if they understood, they would be more effective at these things. And I think that when we get into these parts of our faith where we're just kind of ignorantly going about it, we want to be a part. I think there's a heart there that says, hey, I want to be engaged in what's going on, but I just don't know. Really, I think it just comes down to a discipleship issue. It's like, well, hey, I see that you're trying. I work, you know, even in my own marriage, I always try to, I try to have a radical, radically positive belief in my wife. Even when she's doing something that is not benefiting me greatly, or maybe it's even caused me some pain, I want to be radically optimistic about her reasonings for doing that, and so I'm going to assume that she's unaware. Now, sometimes we can do things out of just spite or whatever, but I want to assume always that people are doing what they're doing out of a desire to be a part. And so if I approach it from that standpoint, I can come and be like, hey, I see that you're working really hard at this. What a notable and honorable thing that you're doing. Maybe we would be better served doing something else as opposed to coming and going, what are you doing? Like, this is useless. It's worthless. It's not going to help the kingdom at all. No, I'm going to actually assume that you have a heart that wants to follow and serve after the Lord. And so I want to come alongside you now and say, hey, maybe we can adjust some of these things. Your effort is valiant, and I think that what you're doing is actually it actually displays the right heart. Let's now figure out what would be most useful in this, so that we can be effective at what God's called us.
Yeah, I think about the disciples when Jesus first called them.
Yeah.
It's like he didn't necessarily go and call all of the super educated experts.
Yeah,
right?
they were. Many of them were just ignorant regarding a lot of these things.
Yeah, and even in Acts, we see when Peter and John are brought before the religious leaders, they recognized that they were uneducated and that they had been with Jesus. And that's not that's not a pass to not be educated, but I'm just but that was just the reality.
I mean, compared to all of these guys who were supposed to be experts in the law and experts in religion and experts in Jewish life.
And there again, it echoes that Jesus, God chose the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. And I think that is such again, hopefully an encouragement that people who might not be active, in the kingdom in some way, can say, like, I don't have to have it all figured out. I don't have to have gone to seminary or have this like degree in theology in order to be an active part and to do what God is calling me to do. And I remember I used to get, you said this about the disciples were apart. There were people who were followers, but that the disciples were apart. And there was this time in my life where I was so hung up on the verse, many are called, but few are chosen. How do I know if I'm chosen? I don't know. Am I chosen? Am I not chosen? And it would just cause this great deal of anxiety. And I remember hearing this sermon, and it makes me think of the disciples, right? Jesus called them, and what did they do? They said yes.
They followed.
They followed. They dropped what they were doing, and they said, I mean, not literally, right? The Bible doesn't say that. Maybe they did, but the Bible doesn't say it. They said yes. And so the question is, when Jesus calls us, great or small, are we going to say yes? I choose you. And whether you are Luke the doctor, Peter the fisherman, Matthew the tax collector, it doesn't matter. Jesus wants to choose all of us if we will just simply say yes. And I think just like the disciples, we will find that he will empower us to do the work that he is giving us to do. And which kind of leads me into my next question. Matthew 28, go into all the world, preach make disciples, baptize. It's a big task. How do we do that? How do we take something that is a big calling like that and even just begin to carry that out?
So let's go to Acts 1:8. He says, and you shall be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in Samaria, or Judea, in Samaria, and even to the remotest parts of the earth. A couple of things. The world was much smaller back then, not the physical size, but the population size. Like there was it was much more accessible. And praise God that we have believers all over the world now. But Jesus says, let's do it here. Like, how do we start? Hey, have your neighbor over for dinner. Get to know the people that live around you. Get to know what their needs are, what their longings are. How do you find out what their needs are? Hey, we were just out today, saw you out here, wanted to know. You blame it on your church. Our church is taking an initiative where we want to begin to pray for our neighbors. Is there some things that we can pray for you? Maybe we'll do that next week. Maybe Initiative 2025, like, we're going to pray for our neighbors. We're going to pray for our neighborhood. We're going to go and we're going to ask, hey, are there some things that we can be praying for? And then following up with them on that. I find, like, this is New Braunfels Freedom Fellowship. This is our Jerusalem. And Jesus says we should do it first here. And then kind of move out. We've got extended family. We've got places that we go. We are called to be witnesses in everything that we do. There's a lot of us that travel for vacation. You know, y'all were just up in Colorado this last week, and I'm sure y'all were witnessing all the way up there,
whole way, preaching at those sheep and just kidding.
No, but I mean, it's like, look, we are mobile far more than we would give
Yeah.
But we're not we're mobile, but we're not mental in our engagement.
Yeah.
That says, look, I am a witness everywhere I go.
Yeah.
I am a missionary every single place that
Yeah.
I go. Whether I go down to, during the summer, if you get to go on a vacation down to Mexico,
Yeah.
hey, you are a witness for Jesus down
Yeah.
there. It is simple to just stop and allow the Holy Spirit to move on you and be like, look, I just want to go over and ask this couple, hey, I feel like the Lord wants me to pray for you guys. Could I just pray for you?
Yeah.
Have a conversation with someone that you're stuck next to. I mean, all of these things. This is what we're called to do.
Yeah.
We're just a witness to what, and that's what they said. They could tell that they were uneducated men and that they had been with Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can people tell that you have been with Jesus?
Right.
Just by your presence, by your demeanor. But don't wait on the world to come and ask you. Go and tell the world.
Yep.
And that's what he says. Go preach the gospel. What is the gospel? The gospel is simply sharing with people what Jesus has done for me, he can do for them.
Yep.
And so it begins with my own story. Let me tell you about who I used to be.
Yeah.
And what the Lord has done for me.
Yeah.
And wherever you're at, he can do the same for
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely. And it makes me think of the story of the demoniac that Jesus delivered. After he was delivered from the legion of demons, he wanted to get in the boat and he wanted to follow Jesus. He wanted to go wherever Jesus
and
went.
what did he tell him? Go
Stay.
home.
Go home.
Go home.
Yeah.
Tell the people. And I think that, that's one of the messages, is it Mark 5?
Okay.
Is that, or John 5? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Was that?
Mark,
one
I
of
think,
those.
but
I think it might be Mark 5.
Yeah.
And he tells him, he's like, go home.
Yeah.
And that's what that's where I think that we should all go home.
Yeah.
Go to your home and tell the people that know you. Tell the people that are around you. And that's not just family. I mean, that's your home. Part of your home may be where you work during the day and the people that you work with and all of these things. But he says, look, you don't have to follow me to all of these different places.
Right.
What's interesting is that later when the apostles came back through there, they found a lot of believers.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that gets attributed to the demoniac that says he actually went home and he became a real voice for Jesus in that place and got people to follow after him. So.
Won't that be I don't know the best word to put amazing?
Yeah.
To meet him in heaven and all of the people who believed because of his testimony.
Yeah, the Samaritan woman at the well.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like all of these.
Yeah, come and see this man who told me everything about me.
I don't know that I want a guy that knows everything about.
He hung out my laundry, but come and meet him. But it really is the most powerful, and the people who know us the best, who have witnessed who we were, and who we are now. So there's something different about you.
I think that's the beauty of the end of Acts chapter 2. It says that the same people who were condemning them and saying things about them, they saw the way that God had changed them, and it will be of great advantage to them on the day of visitation. What a beautiful picture, because there was an obvious shift in their life, and people were actually giving them a hard time about the shift, but they said that it would be the catalyst for change because of the way that they treated one another and the way that they walked with one another through these things.
It's so powerful. I want to break it down because again, I think that it is good. I think it's noble. I believe it's of the Lord. When I hear, a lot of churches for the city. We're for our city. We want to see our city. And I think that's great. I think it's true. There's I think an even, I would argue, deeper value in saying, let's break it down even further. How about your neighbors? Just like you were saying, right? So if somebody is listening to this conversation or they are, they heard your message on Sunday saying, great, what's the goal? Coach, tell me where to run, I'll run. How would you encourage someone to just get started?
Start at home.
Love it.
Like, just, one of the things that I love to do, I've got I've got college kids that are home and they're starting to go back to school, and so yesterday I just got to put my hands on two of them. They were getting ready to leave, and I was out in my shop working. I had my music going, my saws running. I just kind of shut everything down. I brought both of them over. I put my hands on their head, and I just blessed them, and I reminded them who they were. I reminded them what their purpose was, and then I sent them out from there. And I think that we have to begin in our own home. And so, like, if you're out there, especially you fathers, like you have the ability to bless your family. And I would challenge you, like, just begin. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to sound a certain way. Just the willingness to place your hands on your wife and on your kids, on your family, on the kids that come. I bless the kids that come into my home that are not my own, but I treat them because I know that as I'm a father figure in their life, and I want to pronounce a blessing over them. I want to remind them who they are. I've got a couple of sweet dear widows across the street from our house, and I'm always checking on them. Like, hey, how can I do this? Is there things I can be praying for? What do you need that I can do? And then just begin to move out from there. I get to spend a lot of time here at the office, but I have a lot of couples that come through. I love to be able to pray for them. Just, hey, look, we're just, I'm going to remind you who you are. I'm going to remind you what you're called to. And then I'm going to remind you that we're in this together. And just begin to build out from your nucleus, but don't forget to start at the core.
Yeah.
Don't forget to start in your home.
That's good. Yeah. It's Paul wrote in the New Testament, I really wish I could chapter and verse this right now, but he said, let every man remain in the place that he is when God called him.
Yeah.
And that's not to, again, that's not to say that God might not, like, you put it really well, start at your nucleus and then grow from there. It's not to say that God might not call you to missions or ministry or to, go plant a church or to whatever, God, it's not saying that God might not call you out of that place.
Yeah.
Start where God calls you, because he's got you in that place for a reason.
God's not going to call you out of a place that you're not doing it in the place that you're in.
Yeah.
And I think that it's like, I'm I had a conversation with someone who was like, well, I think that the Lord's calling me to be a missionary. And I asked a couple of basic questions. The first one was, how many people have you led to Christ in the last year? Well, I've just been kind of preparing. I'm like, look, if you're called to be a missionary, you're called to be a missionary here first.
Right.
And so don't just because you think it's glamorous or whatever. I don't know what. I don't know whatever it is. But if you're not doing that here, what makes you think that God is calling you there?
Yeah.
And that's a big hang up, I feel like, in a lot of people's life, is that it's a whole lot easier to do it with people that I don't know than it is to do it with people that know me the best.
Sure. That's good.
And I think that we've got to start in our own home.
Yeah.
Let our family first see the change in us. And then.
Yeah, and you even mentioned, and I hope this is encouraging to somebody.
Yeah.
That if you are one step ahead of someone,
you can lead.
You can lead.
It
really does not have to be grandiose.
Yeah.
Huge. Again, I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't be involved in outreaches, missions.
Yeah.
Those things are wonderful and amazing,
Yeah.
and absolutely. I believe the responsibility of every believer to be a part of it some way at some point. However, it can also be really simple and really tangible.
Yeah.
And close.
Yeah.
Because just like that demoniac.
Well, and I think that even within your own home, if you're all standing shoulder to shoulder, I spend a lot of time in the mountains, hiking and just kind of living off the land for a couple of days every year, and someone's always leading. And we may be standing shoulder to shoulder. We may even be standing face to face, but at some point, someone has to take a step.
That's good.
In a direction.
Yeah.
And the first person to take the step is the one that's leading. And we may be just, back to front, but someone's leading. Someone is plotting a course. And even though we started at the same place, it just took a willingness of one person. And so you may even feel like you're a little bit behind, but sometimes the person that's in the behind comes up to the front and is willing to take a lead. And I just want to encourage people, like, be willing to take a step.
Yeah.
Be willing to get out front and to choose the path and to say, we're going to go this way, especially, again, husbands, fathers in your own home, like, be willing to take a step out and to lead, and to become the man. Get involved in men's groups. Surround yourself with other men who will challenge you and build you up and encourage you to do these things. And let's begin to become the people that God has called us to be.
Yeah, get in the game. Get in the game. Put me in, coach.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to just dive into your message. Again, really excited to dig further into this in the coming weeks and just over the year, and just see what the Lord is going to do this year in us and through us, if we will simply say yes. Take that first step, like you said. That's good. So thank you. And thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Monday Moments. We hope that you got something out of this. If you did, please let us know. We always love to hear from you. Drop us a comment. Share this with somebody. If you know somebody who is ready to get in the game, needs to get in the game, looking for a way to become an active Christian, send this to them. Maybe it's an encouragement. Maybe it helps them take that first step, like we've talked about in our conversation today. Thank you again so much for joining us for another episode of Monday Moments, and we will see you next week.